Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak on Arise News. I am Frank Omalapa, and it's time to review what's making the headlines in the papers this morning. Of course, we have joining us in the city here is Kola Lakpini, an international human rights lawyer, and of course, Sunday Suwa is the group news editor, leadership newspaper. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us, and it's good to have you both in the studio. But let's begin now with what's making round on the front pages of the newspaper. Let's begin with this day of record. Of course, our own this day of record. Take a look at the big story there, which says that a coalition to unseat Tinubu in 2027 doomed to fail. Wike, Sanwo-Olu declare. Some of the rider they say FCT Minister Taku Amechi urges President to release forensic report on NDDC. Of course, Lagos governor condemns political distractions. Governor's defection won't save Tinubu. APC from defeat, says Dalong, and Baba Ahmed says struggle for presidential ticket, biggest test for ADC. Of course, those are some of the headlines as regards what's making round there. But let's take a look at this. Troop thwart terrorists attempt to blow up Mate Dikwa Bridge, kill terrorist fighter. Another there, let's take a look at the map strip there. NEU PRC revenue soars 176.7% to 12.2 trillion naira in 2024. Well, where do we begin from? And taking a look at this particular one, coalition to unseat Tinubu in 2027 doomed to fail. That's according to Wike and Sanwo-Olu. And of course, the question is, it is such a declaration a show of strength or early sign of insecurity within the ruling party? Can a truly national coalition emerge in Nigeria given the prevailing ethnic and ideological divides? Let's start from you, Kola, and how would you respond to this particular headline?
Well, there's so many issues all bundled into that. The first is this looks like a Tower of Babel situation, kind of, and everybody is all there for their own interests. The first and coherent issue which we need to bring out of this is who is going to be the presidential flag bearer, because all these heavyweights are coming, all the big animals coming to the river to drink water now. It's all nice and jolly. When it is time who's going to bail the cat, that's where you're going to see who draws the first blood. I don't understand what former Vice President Atiku is doing there. At his age, and seeing that he has been a serial failure in clinching the prize, the coveted prize, which is the presidency. If that is not quickly settled, or he doesn't quickly issue a statement to say, I am not running again, I think this coalition is going to suffer the same fate that they suffered the last time, where the former vice president divided the PDP. Because essentially, if he had been able to hold the PDP together by not splitting it, and allowing maybe Peter Obi to emerge, and he had given Peter Obi his support, maybe the equations of the story might have been different. So for me, that is most important. Who is going to emerge as the presidential candidate? There are too many heavyweights there. And these are the same people who had formed a coalition before in the past in the APC, wasn't it? You have...
Just to butt in a bit, because there's been rumor that, Peter Obi is tipped, or is being, maybe tipped to just be the favorite bride in this coalition, in this entire coalition again. But the fear there is that even there's already factions within the ADC now, because we saw Kachikwa and all of that.
The Buhari faction is there. The Amiti faction is there.
Right.
The Atiku Abubakar faction is there. Nasir El-Rufai faction. I'll yield the floor to my good friend. It'll be very interesting. It'll be very interesting to see. What's going to go on there?
Perhaps you want to react to that.
Yes, let's not look at the factions that are there in the coalition. Of course, almost all of them, they have interest to contest for the presidential election. And for Sanwo-Olu to say that coalition is distracting government, or Wike saying that they are expired politicians, I think they should allow this statement to be made by Nigerians, because the undecided voter out there, he doesn't care who emerges president. Once he knows that his life will be better off, I think he will go for it. So if Wike and Sanwo-Olu, and Wike, I quite don't really understand his stand, because he is of the PDP, he is not in the coalition, and some members of the PDP have joined the coalition. Sanwo-Olu also, in the last election, he couldn't deliver Lagos to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and so for him to think that this coalition is just a mere gathering of people, I think he may be making a big mistake. What have they put on ground to make sure that they tame the coalition? The coalition is there, and at the end of the day, once they decide on one candidate that suits the reality on ground, then they will give the ruling party a very big fight for their money.
Well, I think the Punch, Saturday Punch, seems to have a similar headlines there, which says, let's head to the Punch right now. It says ADC targets 5 governors as Sanwo-Olu, Wike knock coalition leaders, and some of the writers that say PDP governors ready to defect to our party. Anti-Tinubu group hallucinating, says PDP. I think, but again, the faction, the issue comes in the fact that we're beginning to see, you know, some comment from some of its members, especially its presidential candidate in the 2023 election, and it says that's talking about Dumebi Kachukwu, is already saying that it looks like the emergence of some of the ESCO members, or I say the officials, where David Mark is the interim or acting national chairman, as it were, and they are saying, look, it's more like imposition on a new party that is just coming up and may want to play host to, as an alternative to a political party, or to unseat Tinubu, should not be having this kind of early troubles.
Well, Kachukwu is crying because he won't have strong power to control the party again. He's just crying because the control of the party have been taken away from him. And so if actually he is in the opposition to build up a strong opposition that can unseat the ruling party, I don't see he should not be crying, you know, on this. All he needs to do is to ensure that he join those who have joined his party, to make sure that they give the ruling party the needed opposition, because we need opposition in this country in order to have a good development. But for him to begin to cry, I think he's just crying because the control of the party have been taken away from him.
He doesn't have that. So they say he doesn't have that weight. what do you have to say?
Well,
Kachukwu doesn't have that much weight or power to control the party.
Well, I don't even want to address him. I want to address the issue of the governors.
Okay.
The governors determine who becomes the president in Nigeria. I mean, it's good if the presidential candidate is popular in his own right, but the governors own the land and they determine who becomes president. And this was demonstrated with Chief Olusegun Obasanjo in the post-1999. You remember it was very unpopular, especially in the South and in the States.
Right.
In the Southwest, he was almost like a pariah. He even lost his word. What did he do as a military strategist, or, you know, someone who understands how to curb these things? At the second elections, when he was going to run, they made sure that it changed the pattern, the voting pattern of elections in Nigeria. You know, the presidential election was always the last big fish. Everybody will have, all the structures will have been in place. And he knows that that way, the governors will determine who becomes president. So he reversed that trend and made sure the presidential elections comes first. So he determines who becomes governors in the states. So it will be a week is a long time in politics. 2 weeks ago, did we even know that this party was going to emerge and we're going to have all these factors and all? 2027 is a very long time.
Right.
Let's see what happens in the next, even at the end of 2025.
Let's see what happens at the end of 2025. Let's head to the Guardian newspaper. It's next, and these particular headlines perhaps is spotlighting the health facilities in the country. Poor facilities funding diminish cancer patients' access to health care. Get the details of that story on page 8 and 9 of the Guardian newspaper. And let's say, just before we get into conversation, let's take some other one there, which says Tinubu canvasses just energy transition. Lagos Assembly considers bill on humane services in correctional centers. And federal government raises the alarm over influx of fake solar products. Well, Nigeria should halt importation of construction materials. That's coming from some scholars calling the federal government to order there. Well, I think these are the major headline there. But of course, with this particular headline, if you look at it, Nigeria's rising burden of non-communicable disease, of course, this reflects the kind of enduring challenges in accessing cancer treatment due to poor infrastructure, inadequate funding, and of course neglect for public health. But of course the question will be is that why is cancer treatment still a luxury in a country with over 200 million? I mean, people can access affordable health care.
Well, I've lost a few friends to cancer, so this is very close home. It's not just cancer, unfortunately. It's everything. Why can't we have a sustainable and robust healthcare system in Nigeria, in our country? And simply because our leaders don't believe in the country anymore. When we were growing up, University College Hospital, UCH Battle was zenith. Anything that UCH could not treat, right, then you're in trouble. And it was a regional powerhouse. You had all the people from West Africa trooping in. In fact, that's the regional center for you to write your West African College of Physician, West African College of Surgeons exams. It was a darling of everyone. And you even had people, from various countries, right, in the 70s. And we had the royal family in one of the countries in the Middle East coming to University College Hospital in Ibadan to get treated. Gradually, we had a brain drain, and all our doctors started moving to Saudi Arabia, the UK, the US, etc. So much so that even our leaders, our presidents, don't treat themselves in Nigeria anymore, which is a huge shame. I mean, if there's anything you can talk about the Abacha government, was the fact that it never stepped out of this country to get himself treated or seek medical attention, and made sure that the State House clinic worked perfectly. Right. So in a situation where you have the previous president dashing off to London to go and treat an ear, nose, and throat infection, parking the presidential jet in the airport of London for like 5-6 months and incurring so much damages, I think they only give you laxity for the first 5 days or the first 1 week, and after that, those are the first few days that they waive. You have to pay the landing fees thereafter. The immunity does not cover you for more than a week. Right. So, and then we have the present president as well, who every little time is dashed off to Paris or is somewhere in France or in the UK to go and get himself treated. If the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, was coming to Nigeria to get himself treated like that every time, he will be out of a job. So we need people who actually believe in our country, right, and put in a robust healthcare system in place. Because otherwise what they're saying is, if you're in power, you can afford to dash off and get yourself treated. What happens to over 200 million people, like you said? So it shows that our leaders don't really believe in our country.
Let's talk about Sunday. I would like you to react, because again we talk about the role that subnational government should play. We also talk about the role of National Health Insurance Act or so. I think we have something like that to cover the issue of cancer comprehensively. But could you speak to that before we move on? Unfortunately,
the National Health Insurance Scheme does not cover ailments like cancer, because of it involves a lot of expensive. I remember 2 years ago I did a story how cancer patients were stranded at the National Hospital, and during my investigation I realized that we only have few cancer centers in Nigeria, in Abuja, Enugu, and Lagos. And so most of the northern states are being referred to the National Hospital in Abuja. And the single machine that was carrying out chemotherapy for the patient failed. And so it took the hospital months before it was fixed. It takes me doing repeatedly 2 to 3 stories before that particular machine was fixed. And within that period, I know a cancer patient that died because she was being delayed for treatment at the National Hospital here. So you can see, if these things are happening at the national level, then you know that at the subnational level, it will be terrible, because cancer treatment involves spending a lot of money, and Nigeria need to invest more on the healthcare system. Just
all right. I think we need to enact a law ensuring that whoever becomes president or governor in Nigeria must never send his kids to school abroad and must never seek treatment for him or his family.
We hope that, of course,
if we're able to put that law in place,
yes,
then we would focus and fix things.
Anyway.
Did you see what happened during COVID? Everybody was trying to run out of the country and they couldn't run out. There was a lockdown. You see, and we were confronted with the reality on ground. If they were able to jet abroad and run away, all those centers that were put in place in Nigeria would not be put in place.
I'm quite optimistic as you, I mean, to see, what the government will do as regards, rehabilitating and overhauling the entire system. But let's move on quickly now, because of this particular story. The leadership is next. Let's move on to leadership newspaper. Public hearing, clamor for more state, local governments, others top constitutional review. North Central APC stakeholders shop for Gandoje's replacement. But let's take the biggest story there, which says Wike attacks coalition in no holds bar interview. Because we saw in the media chart in the week where the Minister of FCT, of course, went hard on the coalition, dismissing them with, of course, similar headlines on other newspapers as well. But let's quickly go to this particular story about public hearing. Of course, we're hearing in 6 geopolitical zones. They are beginning to meet to talk about constitutional review. Yesterday, we saw that South they met, and we saw the Senate President was in that meeting, which and quite a number of issues. The issue of police, state police, and the state creation, top some of the conversation. Again, do we need that? That's the big question. Let me start from you, Kola.
If I had my way, I would reduce the number of states which we have in Nigeria. We don't have the power to sustain this huge behemoth which we're all creating. We don't have the finance. So what we have, we can't even sustain them. So why are we creating more states again? It's the same thing. They're creating more universities, more this, more. It doesn't make any sense. Okay. The little which you have, pour your resources into it and make sure that it functions properly.
Great. Let me have your, just few seconds.
Well, I think the problem is not about the number of states we have.
Right.
Every state in Nigeria can sustain itself if we know how to harness our natural and human resources. But the problem is that most of the politicians have been focusing only on oil money coming from the federation account. Like in southern Kaduna, for example, a nickel was discovered. And that nickel alone, if the government can exploit, they say it's a multi-billion-dollar investment lying down on the ground. And it's in a high demand in the international market. So why can't we allow the states to begin to explore the minerals and the natural resources we have,
Let's quickly take this story. Let's go foreign now, and which should be done in a jiffy. Of course, a year of care. Starmer, the first 365 days, talking about the independence now. The independent has this, a year of care. The first 365 days of Starmer in power. And if you take a look at this, July 2024, precisely, I mean, the Labour took the reins of power in the UK. And down the line, 1 year after, quite a lot of issues, conversation on the spending, taxes, and health issues. Just let me have your take, gentlemen, before I allow you to go. 30 seconds each.
I think Stawa is saying that being the Prime Minister, the leader of the country, is different from being the Director of Public Prosecutions. And I think it was last week or so, we were analyzing a story where policy somersault had cost the UK on that case about £3.65 billion pounds or something like that. So it's a very different ball game when you're on the sidelines and than when you actually put in the seat. So he's welcome to the real life of politics now.
Interesting. Sunday, let me have your take before.
In the last 1 year, Starmer have faced a lot of bashing. You know, he has faced a lot of disasters. His house, you know, been on fire for about 4 times in different locations, having some ministers in his government resigning, and they complain about the increase in taxes. So his 1 year, he did not get a honeymoon, I can say that. But then, you know, once you are in a government and you are faced with opposition that are very crafty, you know, very willing to come into power, you must face such challenge. So he needs to analyze his 1 year in office and ensure that he move forward.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. Kola Alakpene is an international human rights lawyer. Thank you for coming on the show. And Sunday Isua is a group news editor, leadership newspaper. Thank you, both of you, for joining us on the show this morning.
So
well, just before we wrap up on the show this morning, troops of Operation Heading-Kai have recovered 56 improvised explosive devices allegedly planted by suspected terrorists on the strategic Mate-Dikwa bridge in Borno State, averting what could have been a deadly ambush. In a statement, the acting deputy director of Army Public Relations, Operation Heading-Kai, Ruben Govangia, stated that and reveals that the explosives were discovered during a clearance operation by soldiers of the 24th Brigade based in Dikwa. The army says the IEDs were believed to have been planted by suspected members of the Islamic State West African province in a calculated attempt to inflict mass casualties and disrupt both military and civilian movement along the vital road. In the same vein, troops, while conducting a coordinated fighting patrol to Fulatari in Gubio local government area of Borno State, captured a terrorist fighter and recovered an AK-47 rifle with amazing a magazine and large quantity of ammunition. Well, that's all we have time for here on Daybreak, and thank you for your time. Please do keep it here on Arise News.